Hello everyone, my name is Amber Guo. Since from a young age, I have a lot of passion towards collage art. This aesthetic has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. To some extent, I see myself as a maximalism. I contain multitudes, wrote the American poet Walt Whitman. I'm aiming to transform artistic value into architecture. I found several overreaching themes throughout of my body of work. During my 3 years journey in architecture, I established my practice by deconstructing the narrative and the cinematography technique, by applying playful processes which trigger potential architecture forms, by constantly looking for the difference and the intimacy between sculpture and architecture. As such, I have identified three strands which form the basis of my portfolio. The main strands which tie my agendas, manifestos, and drawings together, formed into a wearable artifact of my continued practice, then namely chromophobia, dimensional evolution, and into the void. The primary way of conveying my design was sculpting. The first modeling software I've learned at the beginning is ZBrush. I started to understand the negative and positive space and have some spatial thinking. You can also see a clue from my practice at that period. I have a lot of passion towards organic form and highly ornamental designing style. Particularly in the studio scene where I'm seeking to merge the personality of a movie character into food, which as a part of mise-en-scene, mainly at large detailed scale and becomes the architecture for investigation of an architecture spread. For example, in the early experiments of the studio, the food photogrammetry process was digested as ornament. I 3D scanned the food and turned them into meshes, then applied those qualities to the capture theater. You can see the main actress, Georgina, in the film The Cook, the Thief, his wife, and her lover, is concretized into oyster, which then reveals her inner self towards her lover as the soft texture of the oyster meat, compel her hate and cruelty towards her husband as a hardshare. And the cinematic technique was deconstructed into 3 acts, analyzing the movement of the camera character and turn them into spaces. Those pathways represent the trace, and the corners are the focus point of the camera. The plot of the film was also implied throughout the capture theater. In the studio after type, the similar design language has been applied. The project aims to reframe the way people experience the ocean through a cinematic lens. Then we move to the second thread, dimensional evolution. I like bodies, both architectural, creaturely, or otherwise. As such, I use ideas of figuration and the figure to design spatial fantasies away from the preconceived notions. With architecture, a figure can be literally as a sculpture, a painting, or a projection. It can also be allegorical in its telling of a story. I can feel it contains the tactiles, the smell, even the flow of the blood into the architecture, which adds a humanity touch towards my design, a sense of compassion, loneliness, and fragility aroused. The audience will ask to empathize with the architecture, with the great human civilization. During the process of design, I don't want to play a role of God. I want to scale down the architecture. On the other hand, instead of being a screenwriter, I prefer to play a role of performer, always dancing with the architecture, making the dynamic movement concretely shown on the architecture. In the progress of making the architecture diagram, I used 2D lines of the rite of spring dancing paths and movement section lines to boolean difference with the model, leading a dancing path for the visitors. The idea behind is using architecture space to inform visitors follow the dance, at the same time with the idea to intercept through movement. In my second studio enclosure for endangered animals, I combine the dynamic movement and the language of body together, which can also be recorded as two of my most essential design styles. I'm not only restricted by the physical movement, but also their habits or other features. I analyze the logic of bats or ultrasonic to simulate its bands inside the space, then find the basic architectural language to inform the enclosure for bats. This design methodology was continuing to use for the next project. I analyzed the action of wallabies, use Grasshopper to find the most frequency points in the site that wallabies may like to stay. Then we move to the next chapter, Into the Void. Architecture is always dream and function, expression of utopian and instrument of a convenience, wrote Roland Barthes. The projects of Gordon Matta Clark always conveys a sense of cruelty and romance. I can feel his empathy towards those abandoned buildings, and those gaps and voids he makes seems like their dialogue, and it informs an aspect of my design idea. Bringing the petrol station into church, merging the bus house with car park, delivered the language of curtain house into bars. I found myself more intent to design a city within a building instead of building in a city. I want to collect the particularly architectural language of a city into Collins Place and connecting them with stairs. The stairs in curtain house with strong vertical circulation. The stairs in public underground toilets that leading people into a second space. The exposed and the hidden, the unified and the chaotic. Architecture then become a seed. Those stairs become branches growing up with the audience. Collins Place and the city, the void of a city. Historical research was also a very important part that informed my design concept. Throughout these 3 years, I got in touch with different architecture features, such as American Midwest and East Coast 19th century architecture, Expressionism, Scandinavian modernism, Soviet avant-garde, 20th century American architecture, mid-20th century modernism in Europe and the New World, post-war UK Smithson's Price and Sterling, post-war Italian modernism, Gaudi, contemporary expressionism, neo-brutalism, and prematuralism. To some extent, this experience subverted my design concept a lot. I strongly contend that when keeping within the realm of purely digital, we lose the human dynamism captured through sketches and drawings. However, we also use a more advanced technology to create a bond between humanity and architecture. Then architecture itself can reflect a deeper sense of humanism, more beyond form and pure aesthetic, resulting in empathy towards the environment. The part to whole relationship about form finding from the primitive nature. In Studio AI City, the algorithm that we kept researching and analyzing is based on the motion trail of bird concentration. They gather to generating an elegant, floating form in sky. Within the system of PD, one little bird resembles one component, and each little component have the influence on affecting other components around them. With countless of components, it has the power to bring a high degree of structural complexity building into creation. Is that digital? Yes. Is that pure digital? Maybe not. This is the first time I highly connect digital, the art of nature, and architecture together, at the same time giving me a hint. Maybe I can use digital as a tool to enhance humanity in architecture, instead of being manipulated by it. For the past 3 years, I have been focusing on merging art into architecture, no matter constructing the structure, the plot, the cinematic techniques of the film, the analysis of the plant, body structure, or capturing the dynamic movements. It's all for the hope to keep architecture with a part of human temperature, love, and empathy towards nature. Architecture has never been a game with only technology and machine, but the creation of extreme expression in human spirit. This can't be reached with any form of structure.